how do we start our Markdown? So our Markdown is actually a different type of R file format, right? So usually we go here and we open a new file and we open an R script. And you know what that looks like, right? We write our analysis code here, we save that code, and we visit it later and run it and so forth. The analysis is produced here, the plots are here, tables are sometimes saved as table output or as sort of HTML output. We've done all that in the previous sessions. Actually, if we want to go and open an R Markdown script, it's a similar process, but instead of choosing R script, you go down and choose R Markdown. So then this window pops up and it asks you to give the Markdown file a name. Let's call it my first R report. And you type in the author and then you choose which type of output format you want, HTML, PDF, or a Word file. For the moment, let's just stick with HTML. We can easily use that later and convert it, but also easy to show it in a browser, right? So we'll click OK, and this is the type of file that opens. This is an R Markdown file, and actually by default it puts some example text in, right? So there are three important elements of an R Markdown file. So there are three important elements of any R Markdown file. The first one is the so-called Yaml header, or YAML header, and it defines general characteristics for the whole report. For example, the title, right? Also the author and the date and the output. Now, later on, we're going to customize this, and we can also set here whether you want to show a table of contents and what the type of theme or look we want for the file and so forth. So this is customizable, but the first part here is the YAML header. The second part are called code chunks. Code chunks always start and end with these three quotation marks. And then a line defining the type of code chunk, and then actually the code, the R code, and then closing with another three quotation marks. In this code chunk is where the analysis happens, right? So here you actually run code like we did in previous weeks, where we analyze data, produce outputs, and so forth. An approach that we're actually going to use is that we just cite here or reference to another R script that we built in the past. We load it here in the code chunk, it gets loaded into our environment, and we just highlight the particular output that we want, the figure or the table or so forth, right? The third element of an R Markdown file is the actual text, right? Is the language. Here we have some example text. For example, R Markdown, this is a title or a subtitle marked by the pound sign, 1, 2, or 3 pound signs. And then here we could write anything, right? This is just an example text that R provides by default. We can include hyperlinks. We can make things bold and cursive. We can do almost anything that you could do in Microsoft Word, for example, when you edit your text and format your text, okay? And then we can alternate text with code chunks, right? So the last step in producing a R report, once you've sort of specified all the general characteristics in the YAML header, you have included all your code chunks and your analysis and the outputs that you want to include in the report, and the text that you want to write, is actually knit this report. And knitting in this case just means producing a report, pulling it together, right? And for that, you can click on knit. You choose a place where you want to save it. In my case, let's say course material video, our Markdown report. Let's save the file here. And it's going to start producing it and producing this first report. This is what it looks like the title, the author, the date, right? And then we have some text, remember, title here, some text that were written, hyperlink and so forth. We also see some R code here, the output window, and in the default Markdown file, the author included a scatter plot here, which is is immediately displayed in the output window. Okay, so this is just a first default example. Now we're actually going to go ahead and write our own report featuring some of the tables and figures we produced over the last 8 weeks and incorporate them here into a Markdown report. And I'll show you how to customize it, how to add text and format text and so forth. So let's go ahead.